as you noticed, this was a video on prophecies that are from all religions. That is amazing. It all leads to the middle of 19th century. From all religions. Now the only difference is that if you read the Buddhist books, they say that the manifestation will come from the West, because they're in India. If you read the Bible, they say it comes from the East, Elam and Babylon and Assyria, which is the east of Israel. And it'll come, they said that he will come, it says, from sea to sea, Caspian Sea, Black Sea, Mediterranean. And he will come from river to river, Euphrates, and he will come, it says, from fortress city to another fortress city. And as he was being banished, Baha'u'llah was taken to Istanbul, which was the fortress city, and the other fortress city of Akka, which is in today Israel. At that time, that was the jail for criminals. That is the city where Baha'u'llah passed away in 1892, around the time that your church began, 1892. It's amazing. Let me also mention this while you're getting ready. In 1893, for the first time, the name of Baha'u'llah was mentioned in this country, for the first time. And that was also in Chicago, in a conference, in a huge conference of all Christian denominations. And for the first time, Catholics and all the different Protestant groups participated in that conference. And that conference had a conclusion. Probably some of the Baha'is remember the conclusion of that conference. What do you think was the conclusion? That until Jesus Christ returns himself, we cannot reconcile among ourselves. So we have thousands of denominations. Baha'u'llah wants to make it one denomination that is all the same truth. You're working on it, we are working on it, and I'm sure that your church and our church would merge one of these days. And Richard just gave me the good news. I can't wait to share it. One of the books written by a Baha'i 100 years ago was by a British Baha'i, which is called Baha'u'llah and the New Era. And I suggested that I'm retired, I'll charge you $1 a year, can I teach it? They said yes. So we'll have a class on Baha'u'llah and the New Era, which is the history, the teachings, and prophecies of the Baha'i faith. In this church, he will tell you the date. Thank you. What we have here for you today is that I apologize for my rambling. I'm an old man, and I just rambled over there a few things that came to my mind because they asked me to talk about Baha'i faith. And this is 170 years history of what we think humanity has been waiting for. And my library is 200 volumes of books. I know it's just didn't know what to do, so I bought it. But the best is for last, which is right here. This statement, which is 2.5 pages, will be read by 4 of my wonderful Baha'i friends, is a statement by Shoghi Effendi. He was the guardian of the Baha'i faith, who passed away in 1957 in Haifa. And he very concisely said what a lot of people would, just like Baha'u'llah, that little book, said that the essence of all religions. He says in 2.5 pages what a lot of us can say in 200 hours. So without further ado, our 4 friends would start. Is it Gary Slotski? Is he here? Gary, can you show him? somebody else needs to do it. So I'll ask Mr. Merkel, would you please lead the first section? And let's see if the other friends are here. Jane Bailey is here, and Dr. Greg Watson.
Jane Mahboubi or Jane Bailey?
I'm sorry.
In spirit, Jane.
I'm so sorry. Jane Mahboubi. No, yeah.
Jane's here in spirit.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
And Dr. Greg Watson is doing the fourth part.
He's in a much better.
And Ms. Nancy Hutcheon will be doing the third part. So these are the 4-part series, and then each of the friends, their section is about four minutes. They will read that segment and explain it. The teachings of the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah, Abdul-Baha, and Abdul-Baha and Shoghi Effendi, who were the interpreters of the Baha'i faith. And the reason why this is important is that in past religions, after the manifestation died, what happened? Some people said, Peter is the one, or Paul is the one, or Ali is the one, or somebody else is the one who take the lead, and therefore it caused division. In the Baha'i faith, there's absolutely no possibility for division, because the will of the manifestation is written down by himself, sealed and signed, and then it goes on. So that gives us the whole perspective of the teachings, history, and Baha'i administration that we didn't have to talk about.
The Baha'i faith upholds the unity of God, recognizes the unity of his prophets, and inculcates the principle of the oneness and wholeness of the entire human race. It proclaims the necessity and the inevitability of the unification of mankind, asserts that it is gradually approaching, and claims that nothing short of the transmuting Spirit of God, working through his chosen mouthpiece in this day, can ultimately succeed in bringing it about. It, moreover, enjoins upon its followers the primary duty of an unfettered search after truth, condemns all manner of prejudice and superstition, declares the purpose of religion to be the promotion of amity and concord, proclaims its essential harmony with science, and recognizing it as the foremost agency for the pacification and the orderly progress in human society. It unequivocally maintains the principle of equal rights, opportunities, and privileges for men and women, insists on compulsory education, eliminates extremes of poverty and wealth, abolishes the institution of priesthood, prohibits slavery, asceticism, mendicancy, and monasticism, prescribes monogamy, discourages divorce, emphasizes the necessity of strict obedience to one's government, exalts any work performed in the spirit of service to the level of worship, urges either the creation or the selection of an auxiliary international language, and delineates the outlines of those institutions that must establish and perpetuate the general peace of mankind.
As we started the Baha'i faith, evolved.
Okay, well, I shall just read this part about the Bab, who was the forerunner of the founder of the Baha'i faith. This Bab is a title, it means gate. It's just as John the Baptist in Christianity was a forerunner who announced the coming of Christ. So this section here, I'm just going to read, and then I'll talk to you about Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. So the Baha'i faith revolves around the three central figures, the first of whom, a youth, a native of Shiraz, named Mirza Ali ibn Muhammad, known as the Bab, or the Gate, and in May of 1844, at the age of 25, advanced the claim of being the herald, or the one who, according to sacred scriptures of the past dispensations would announce and prepare the way for the advent of one greater than himself. And his mission would be, according to those same scriptures, to inaugurate an era of righteousness and peace, an era that would be hailed as the consummation of all previous dispensations, and initiate a new cycle in the organized forces of church and state in his native land, that being Persia, and today we know it as Iran. And he was thence exiled to the mountains of Azerbaijan and imprisoned in the fortresses of Mahboubi and in Sharik, and ultimately he was executed in July of 1850 by a firing squad in the city of Tabriz. So, one of those followers of his, the followers of Bab were called Babis. Okay, and there were 20,000 or more of them who were martyred, killed because of uprising generated by mullahs and so forth in the mosque. One of those followers had the name Mirza Hossein Ali, and because of his father's position in service of the Shah, he was not killed. Rather, he was imprisoned. And while he was imprisoned in Tehran, in Sharik, he received a revelation from God that he was the one whose advent that Bob had been talking about. He had been sending his disciples out all over Iran, all over Persia, to prepare them for his coming. So he received this revelation that he was the one. And the title that he took is Baha'u'llah. It means the glory of God. And so those of you who were privileged to hear our dear friend Iraj this morning already spoke about this, so I'm reiterating what he's already said. And also that in his claim, he claimed to be the fulfillment of all religions of the past, the renewal of all these religions, and you saw this in the video here. So I'm going to read just a bit, and then I want to expound just on one of his writings. So first he was imprisoned in Tehran, and then because of instigation of clerics and so forth, and he was banished. This was part of the Ottoman Empire. He was banished to Iraq, to Baghdad. And from there he was sent on to Constantinople, and then to Adrianople. This is all part of the huge Ottoman Empire. And finally to the prison city of Akka, which was at that time Palestine. Today we know it as Israel. So this ancient fortress city. And he remained incarcerated for no less than a total of 40 years, but 24 of those years were in Akka. And he passed away in 1892, as Iraj was telling you. Well, in the course of his banishment, and particularly during this period in Adrianople and Akka, he formulated all the laws and ordinances of his dispensation, and as Iraj told you, more than 100 volumes, only a portion of which have yet been translated into English. And the premier translator of those was his great-grandson, Shoghi Effendi, that you'll hear a little bit more about, the guardian of the Baha'i faith. And so we have in English access to a great deal of this. It's online, by the way, too, and I'm sure Iraj has told you that, and he'll give you the in his courses he's going to give to you. But in these ordinances and principles and letters, he proclaimed his message. This is probably the most astounding thing to me. Of all previous dispensations, none of them directly address the reigning heads and rulers of the most powerful kingdoms and countries on earth. This is the first time manifestation of God has directly written to them. And so in these messages, he directed his message to the kings and rulers of both the East and the West, Christians, Muslims. He addressed the Pope, the Caliph of Islam, all of the chief magistrates of the republicans of the American continent. He the entire Christian sacerdotal order, the leaders of Shia and Sunni Islam, and the high priests of Zoroastrian religion. And in this writings he proclaimed his revelation and summoned those whom he addressed to heed his call and espouse his faith, and warned them of the consequences of their refusal, denounced in some cases their arrogance and tyranny. I want to take just a couple more minutes to read to you the words of Baha'u'llah. Well, first of all, Shoghi Effendi says it was during this period in Adrianople and in Akka, where he was revealing these 100 volumes, that his revelation reached its meridian glory, meaning the highest point, as in the sun's rays shining on the earth, through his proclamation to the founders, to the kings and rulers. And this is what Baha'u'llah himself says: "Never since the beginning of the world hath the message been so openly proclaimed." And one among these is called the Surah of the Temple. This is Surah, is something like a letter or a chapter. And in this, he addresses his message to Pope Pius IX, Napoleon III, Tsar Alexander II, Queen Victoria, and Nasiruddin Shah of Persia. In this, he revealed this in Adrianople. Later, he reformulated it in Akka, and he said this should be written in the form of a pentacle, or a five-pointed star, which represents the human being. If you look at, head, arms, and legs. Okay, and he says that this symbolizes the human temple, and these are words. Shoghi Effendi, the great interpreter and translator, says that these words reveal the importance he attached to these messages, and they indicate their direct association with the prophecies of the Old Testament. And this is what Baha'u'llah says: "Thus have we built the temple with the hands of power and might. Could ye but know it. This is the temple promised unto you in the book. Draw ye nigh unto it. This is that which profiteth you, could ye but comprehend it. Be fair, O peoples of the earth. Which is preferable, this or a temple which is built of clay? Set your faces towards it. Thus have you been commanded by God to help in peril the self-subsisting." And he not only wrote to them once, he wrote more than once to these crowned heads of state and rulers. He outlines some of the qualities which should adorn every crowned head. I'm just going to take about 1 or 2 more minutes to read and see if you agree. This is good advice that's still very, very timely today. This is what he's saying to these people. Tsar Alexander II. Remember that, Imperial Russia and Napoleon III. Compose your differences and reduce your armaments, that the burden of your expenditures may be lightened, that your minds and hearts may be tranquilized. Heal the dissensions that divide you, and you will no longer be in need of any armaments except what the protection of your cities and territories demandeth. Fear ye God, and take heed not to outstrip the bounds of moderation, and be numbered among the extravagant. We have learned that you are increasing your outlay every year, and are laying the burden thereof on your subjects. This verily is more than they can bear, and is a grievous injustice. Decide justly between men, and be ye the emblems of justice amongst them. This, if you judge fairly, is a thing that behoveth you, and beseemeth your station." I won't take any more of your time for that, but I invite you to read this book. I brought a copy of it. You can look it up online. Perhaps Iraj will make it available. It's called The Summons of the Lord of Hosts. And you might recall he was saying this is the title in the Old Testament, given the time of the end expected by Jews. So this is the summons of Baha'u'llah. And all of these letters, this is the first time they've been compiled in English. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let me to announce something and then we'll continue.
For those of you who are attending the 11:15 service, please go ahead and feel free to leave at 11, which is our scheduled time. But for those of you who would like to stay and listen to the continuation program, we would love to have you stay. We'll just run a little over and go till about 11:15. We'll go ahead and take a collection. For those of you whose tradition it is not to donate, please do not worry about that. But I'll just go ahead and pass these baskets. We have one of that side and one of this side. This helps keep our soul talks going.
You know, I did not do a lot of research like my friend who was reading the parts about Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha. Iraj just asked me to read a particular portion that the grandson of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, wrote about the introduction to the Baha'i faith. So I'm going to sort of follow suit there. And what he was saying is the eldest son, his name was Shoghi Effendi, and he's also known as Abdul-Baha, which means the servant of Baha, appointed by him as his lawful successor and the authorized interpreter of his teachings, who since early childhood had been closely associated with his father, Baha'u'llah, and shared his exile and tribulations. He remained a prisoner until 1908, when as a result of the Young Turk Revolution, he was released from his confinement. Establishing his residence in Haifa, he embarked soon after on his 3-year journey to Egypt, Europe, and North America, in the course of which he expounded before vast audiences the teachings of his father and predicted the approach of that catastrophe that was soon to befall mankind. He returned to his home on the eve of the First World War, in the course of which he was exposed to constant danger until the liberation of Palestine by the forces under the command of General Allenby, who extended the utmost consideration to him and to the small band of his fellow exiles in Akka and Haifa. The passing of Abdul-Baha in 1921 marked the termination of the first and heroic age of the Baha'i faith and signalized the opening of the formative age, destined to witness the gradual emergence of the administrative order, whose establishment had been foretold by the Bab, whose laws were revealed by Baha'u'llah, whose outlines were delineated by Abdul-Baha in his will and testament, and whose foundations are now being laid by the national and local councils, which are elected by the professed adherents of the faith. I think you have the administrative.
The last section of the letter that we've been reading from relates to the administrative order. And, okay, louder?
Please,
All right.
just for me.
Yeah. The statement that we've been reading from was prepared for the UN Special Committee on Palestine, which I don't know if you're aware the Baha'i faith was there before Israel was there, and so everyone wanted to know what is this religion that's been founded out of a prison here in Akka. And so the report was given by the guardian of the faith to this UN Special Committee in a very short form to give a definition and what we were up to. I'll read the last couple of paragraphs. The administrative order, unlike the systems evolved after the death of the founders of the various religions, is divine in origin, rests securely on the laws, the precepts, the ordinances, and institutions which the founder of the faith himself specifically laid down and unequivocally established, and functions in strict accordance with the interpretations of the authorized interpreter of its holy scriptures. its authorized interpreter being Abdul-Baha, whom you just heard about, who went into prison himself with his father, and as did the family, for many, many years. The faith which this order serves, safeguards, and promotes is, it should be noted in this connection, this faith is essentially supernatural and supranational, entirely non-political and non-partisan, and diametrically opposed to any policy or school of thought that seeks to exalt any particular race, class, or nation. It is free from any form of ecclesiasticism, has neither priesthood nor rituals, and is supported exclusively by voluntary contributions made by its avowed adherents. Though loyal to their respective governments and though imbued with the love of their own country, and anxious to promote at all times its best interests, the followers of the Baha'i faith nevertheless, viewing mankind as one entity and profoundly attached to its vital interests, will not hesitate to subordinate every particular interest, be it personal, regional, or national, to the overriding interests of the generality of mankind, knowing full well that in a world of interdependent peoples and nations, the advantage of the part is best achieved, best to be reached by the advantage of the whole, and that no lasting result can be achieved by any of the component parts if the general interests of the entity itself are neglected. So in this particular paragraph, you've heard, and this is typical of some of the Guardian's writings, that one sentence becomes a paragraph, and it's quite hard to parse it and get all the phrasing, but it's so concise. That's the way he chose his style. And in it, you heard that there's no priesthood or sacerdotal order, no clergy, no mullahs, no preachers, no ministers. And in a sense, all are teachers and equal in that respect. But in every community where there are at least 9 members, an assembly is elected to govern the affairs of the community, and all the decisions that affect the community affairs are arrived at through group consultation, which is an extremely important Baha'i principle. And through this process of consultation, Baha'is seek not only unity, but unanimity, or total agreement. And the outcome of this process results in a unified action. Now, during the process, of course, there may be conflicting ideas, and this is fine, because the spark of truth often comes forth from the clash of conflicting opinions, just like flint and steel creates a spark. And that's a metaphor that we find in our writings. And so these opposing ideas can certainly all be put on the table. Everyone is free to share his ideas, and no one is suppressed. But after it's discussed, and all these ideas are shared by all, and not owned particularly by one particular person, he gives up his idea to the group, then they reach an agreement. And when this agreement is reached, unlike what takes place in the old world order system of things, there is no dissenting opinion. There is no minority report like you would see in the U.S. Supreme Court. No one else setting up a group to continually attempt to subvert the outcome of the decision. And as a result of that, we get to see whether the decision was really that good or not. And if it wasn't perfect, then it'll fail on its own merit, not because someone was trying to subvert it. And we'll know the difference between a good outcome, a good consultation, a good decision, and one that was opposed and was defeated or failed because of that. And so it's a beautiful thing to watch, and Baha'is believe it's a spiritual process, that in this administrative order, the spirit of the cause is able to operate in the world. It's a bit like the human body and the human spirit, that the administrative order is like the body in relationship to this Holy Spirit that all of us feel is generating the entire universe and attempts to guide our affairs. The people of faith believe this, not all the people of religion, people of science, but certainly the people of religious faith. believes God cares about our affairs and will guide us if we pray to Him and seek these answers. So in every assembly meeting, we pray to the Holy Spirit for this guidance and for the outcome of our consultation. And I'll end with just a picture of the World Center. I brought some of the buildings here. And you're just free to come up and take a look. There's an ark on Mount Carmel, which is prophesied in the Holy Ghost of the place of the return. And we have the seat of the Universal House of Justice, which is the international elected body. We have the International Teaching Center, the Center for the Study of the Sacred Text, and the International Archive.
Thank you so much. We have until 9, 10, 11:15. So we have 10 minutes for question and answer, and we have Dr. Ahdieh and Mrs. Emma Mortazie. I'll give you one of those. And then those who are here, the friends of the Baha'is, I have a gift for you before you leave, if anyone needs to leave. So Dr. Ahdieh and Ms. Mortazie, if you please come to the front, and if any of the friends have any questions, please go ahead and ask. Okay, so there has been a lot that has been talked about. The Baha'i history and the Baha'i and prophecies and teachings and laws and administration. This was just a glimpse of it. So if there's any question at all, I think that's not sure. Thank you so much for being here.
Tell us more about the universal language.
Well, one of the principles of our faith, Baha'u'llah has said that mankind has come to an age now where we all need to be able to speak to each other and understand each other. So we will continue to have our own languages and dialects, but at this time, either a language that will be known universally will either be chosen from among languages we already have, or a new language will be created. So some of you may remember that during the early 1900s, a language called Esperanto was developed and was used by people and learned by people. We don't know if that's going to be the universal language or not, or if it will be another language. And right now, science and math and all of that seems to be English might be the one that's going to be that universal language, but we don't know yet what that will be.
But the beauty of it is that Baha'u'llah said every person will learn two languages. One will be the international language, which has been chosen so that all humanity could converse freely and with ease. The second will be the mother language, so that the sweetness of culture will not be lost. Because in the Baha'i faith, as much as emphasis is on unity, but it's unity in diversity, and we would love to keep the diversity of the cultures, diversity of languages, the sweetness of that.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that Mrs. Nwandi Lawson is with us also. She's one of the Baha'i counselors. And what that is that a few Baha'is from all across the globe, we are now 5 or 6 million, are chosen as our counselors, like you have a spiritual leader. We don't have priests or ministers, but they are in charge of protecting the Baha'i faith in order to become unified and advise us on different matters. Thank you for being here. Question?
I was really interested in the administrative order. It's interesting, this country was founded to be a republic, not a democracy. So that same process you're talking about would have been the original process that we would have used as a republic, not to have dissension at all, but to put forth. And I'm finding that there's a process I talk about a lot called the third way, and it says that any type of conflict, there's an opportunity for the spark of creativity. And I think that that is just a dynamic, powerful way of guidance for a group of very diverse people. And that's one of the things that really did impress me. And I'm from Rockford, Illinois, which is about 90 miles from Chicago. And I actually actually visited the temple in 1965. And I was very, very impressed then. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, it sounds very much like the process that you're speaking of is very similar to what Greg spoke about as far as consultation within Baha'i institutions. And frankly, the process of consultation is at all levels. It's in Baha'i homes, it's how Baha'is do business, it's how Baha'is conduct themselves in administration as well. So once you're able to acknowledge that your personal view or my personal view is in fact not absolute truth, but that if I'm seeking truth, I must hear all of these views and I must respect them, and then from whatever the decision that is made, I know that I can execute this very joyfully, without contention, and that I can learn from this because I'm not fearful about making a mistake. I realize that if an error has been made, we'll discover that and we'll figure out how to work forward. But that the most grievous thing that could happen is that we would have disunity. And so if we combat one another, then no decision we make is actually truth. Nothing is going to help us advance. But as far as the administrative order, we spoke of the local spiritual assembly, meaning that at each community where there are 9 or more adult Baha'is, they have an election each year, one that is free from all forms of politics. I was amazed by this. I actually became a Baha'i about 13 years ago, and having been a political reporter for a lot longer than that, I was amazed by a system whereby we simply went into a room and we said prayers and we had a list of names of people who lived in this given locality, and from that, with no speeches, no discussion of the qualifications or lack thereof, we were to vote for 9 members. And then we were to follow these 9 members for 1 year's time that they were serving the community. And it works. And so too, at the national level, we elect delegates each year, and those delegates go to Wilmette and elect a national spiritual assembly for the U.S. and for all other nations around the world as well. The process is the same. And again, having had the opportunity to participate in that process, it's a rarefied and wonderful spiritual atmosphere whereby any Baha'i adult may be elected to serve in this capacity for the entire nation. And then once every 5 years, we spoke also of the Universal House of Justice, which is the supreme governing body for the Baha'i world. And in a like fashion, every 5 years, Baha'is, delegates gather and elect that body as well. And so it is a system that certainly looks much different than the one that we see in our typical decision-making for administrative bodies.
Question, please.
Okay, I hope I'm not going to cause a problem. My brother is a Baha'i and his wife, and they've been Baha'is for 40 years, and I've been to the Wilmette Temple many times, and I love your philosophy. But I don't understand the relationship you have with the gay community. Okay, because according to my brother, gays are not free to, they're not embraced by the Baha'i community in a way that they could live their life openly and honestly and still feel that connection to God. And unity is a very open society there where we have lots of gay, lesbians, transgender folks, and just wanting some clarification from you to see if my brother is representing the Baha'i faith in the best way. And so could you speak to the gay community and how...
If I may, I will read the statement, which is the recent statement from the Baha'i faith, and then Nwandi can continue. This statement said, Baha'is are left to apply the teachings at their own discretion. Let me start with this fact, that we are essentially soul. We are souls. I mean, in the souls, there is no gay or lesbian or male or female, it's all one soul. Baha'is are left to apply the teachings at their own discretion and are discouraged from singling out homosexuality over other transgressions, such as the consumption of alcohol or other affairs. Membership in the Baha'i community is therefore open to lesbian and gay adherents, who are to be advised and sympathized with. The religion has a strong emphasis on traditional values found in Abrahamic religions, which promotes chastity over sexual promiscuity. The Baha'i faith, however, leaves the application of laws of social conduct largely up to the individual, and Baha'is generally do not advocate for or discriminate against homosexual people. Baha'i teachings state that Baha'is should not treat homosexual people as condemned or outcasts, nor expect people who are not Baha'is to follow Baha'i laws. The Baha'i writings teach adherents to treat everyone with respect and dignity, and an attitude of discrimination and social intolerance toward homosexuals is not supported in the Baha'i teaching. And it goes on.
So because you know that one of the primary principles of the Baha'i faith is freedom from all forms of prejudice, it would of course make sense what Iraj was sharing. I'm thinking most specifically of a quotation that was given to us by Abdul-Baha, who was the son of Baha'u'llah, and the exemplar, the one to whom Baha'is turn when we're trying to figure out what is an example. I can't figure out exactly what this unity looks like. Sometimes I might find some prejudice raising up in me, or I may not treat a man or a woman as my equal. But Abdul-Baha tells us, do not be satisfied until each one with whom you are concerned is to you as a member of your family. Consider each as either a sister or a father or a brother or a child. And if you should do this, all of your difficulties will vanish. You will know what to do. And so while we're learning, and we're all just in this process of growing and learning how to teach these, how to actually live these teachings of unity, absence of prejudice. But while we're doing that, if we can turn our attention to that principle that we're one human family, and the best way to discredit ourselves is to act in any manner that is prejudiced towards another human being. That being said, unfortunately, we're living in an era of great political division. And unfortunately, this particular issue has been taken into the political arena, and it's using various people as pawns in a system that really is one that's going to roll up and go away. And so a lot of what people are discussing as being the rights or lack thereof is really a group of people, or groups of people actually being pitted against each other, instead of actually looking at, as Iraj pointed out, what is the content of each individual's soul. So frankly, as far as sometimes people, I know I was in a gathering not too long ago and they wanted to know, what is the Baha'i position on gay marriage? Well, marriage, of course, in this country is something that is determined by states, and it is legislated. And at this time, people are making votes and they're doing things around that. Baha'is are free to go into the ballot box and to vote according to their conscience, and there will never be in a Baha'i community anyone who would come in and direct someone in that regard. But these are matters of politics, and therefore there really is not a Baha'i position on political issues.
I'd like to add another couple of paragraphs or statements or sentences really, because it's important, because there's a lot of confusion on this issue among Baha'is as well. It says that individuals who are openly homosexual are not prevented from entering the religion, the Baha'i faith, and joining in community life. There is also recognition that becoming a Baha'i is not conditional on complete and strict compliance with all Baha'i standards and laws. The spiritual assemblies are told to act patiently and gradually to persuade members to accept principles inwardly. And then the last sentence says that in 2009, a gay Baha'i, set up the Gay and Lesbian Baha'i Story Project, in which lesbian and gay Baha'is and others may share experiences they have had within the Baha'i community. As of February 2014, some of the friends may like to go take a look at it. I haven't seen it yet. It said there are 68 stories by gay Baha'is. The purpose of this website is to tell, listen to, and reflect upon stories of gay lesbian Baha'is and their supportive friends and family. Thank you so much. I guess we have run out of time, but I guess some of the friends, if you are willing, we will be glad to continue for another 10 minutes.
Were there any other questions before we close? Thank you.
None.
And he'll try.
That's discrimination.